Now, the entire point of this processional drama in ancient Egypt served to exclusively maintain the status quo of the ancient Egyptian society. Remember way back during our first week when we talked about the idea of static societies versus dynamic societies, and that dynamic societies embraced change and wanted to grow, and static societies didn't want to change or grow, they wanted to maintain the status quo. And ancient Egypt was a really good example of that. And one way that they sought to maintain the status quo was with these processional dramas. The whole point of having this drama enacted during this procession was the idea of continuing to tell this story of the pharaoh being the one who was the ultimate power in the society. And you can see why the pharaoh would want that story told over and over and over again, right? Keep the population believing that the pharaoh is the one with all the control and has always been and always will be, right? Never fight that, never want that to change. That's what they wanted their population to believe. So they used drama to act out this core myth, this myth that everyone knew basically by heart, but they didn't want anyone to forget this myth. And it was the same core myth every single year. It was the story of Horus versus Seth. And Horus was always represented as the pharaoh. They always had the character of Horus was always meant to represent the pharaoh. And in the story of Horus versus Seth, it's this myth where Horus and Seth have all these various competitions to see who's going to be king, and Horus beats Seth like every single time. It doesn't matter what their competition is, Horus always wins, and by the end, Horus is determined to be the rightful king of Egypt. And there's not really a lot of plot development to the story. There is a lot of encouraged audience participation because everyone knew the story backwards and forwards. And the festival, in part, was just to continue teaching people the story again and again and just maintain that status quo. So they had Horus, who was supposed to represent the pharaoh, and they just showed that story every year of Horus always winning, always becoming the rightful king of Egypt. And the audience participated in it, and that's how they maintained the status quo. So this type of theater had a really strong ideological function. The idea was to control the feelings and the values and the communal beliefs of the population. So that's basically how it was used in this static society of ancient Egypt. Now let's go on to the next slide.